Shin Noguchi's street photography captures the extraordinary in everyday Japanese life, turning ordinary moments and people into unforgettable visual documents. Through his lens, the overlooked becomes profound. And in this video, you'll discover how Noguchi's candid images can change not only how you see people, but how you photograph them. What makes a grocery line or a quiet street corner feel like visual poetry? I guess that vision would be my answer for that question. In this case, we're talking about Shin Noguchi's vision that is able to transform mundane moments into moments that stop you on your tracks and beg for your observation and consideration. Shin Noguchi's style is the very essence of candid street photography, intimate, figure-focused, and deeply rooted in Japanese life. He's not interested in spectacle, but in the so-called, quote, extraordinary moments of excitement, humanism, and beauty among the flow of everyday life, as he was quoted in an interview. And unlike many other Western street photographers that we've discussed here on the channel, where maybe they focus a little bit more on the dramatic, the confrontation, the faces, and the kind of like more rawness to the photo, I think that Noguchi's work really stands apart even from other Japanese counterparts that we've discussed here on the channel, such as Daido Moriyama or Masahisa Fukase, because they're quite gentle, they're quite poetic, quite lyrical, and, quite quiet in a sense. So I think there's a strength that comes with all of this, and that's why I wanted to talk about his work today. Because rather than chasing bigger stories, he likes to focus on small human truths, moments that we might often overlook. His images therefore invite us to pause, to notice, and to really spend some time with them. As he said on Pen Online, quote, "I capture people going about daily life because these are moments that they themselves do not realize are more beautiful and full of human touch than the carefully choreographed movements." But in my opinion, there's more to this photographer's approach than this first impression that we've just discussed. For instance, can we ask, where does this intimacy come from, even when the photographer is not familiar at all with whom he photographs and where he photographs? I think it's all in the deep appreciation that he retains for people, which I think can be really inferred from his images, especially when we consider the fleeting gestures, glances, and quiet connections he captures with his camera. Noguchi's street photography thrives on emotion and narrative perceived in everyday interactions. As he said, "I'm here, just here, and you're here, just here. There is something here, something beautiful, something special, and it might last but a moment." In fact, he went on to describe his work as being capable of showing the split-second studies of human emotion, connection, and interaction that so often go unnoticed. In this context, can we consider Noguchi's photos as a reminder to all of us to perhaps look closer into the everyday life? Because it's in looking closer that the photographer, in this case Shin Noguchi, is able to discover subtle details such as a subway smile, the momentary unbearable fatigue of a tired worker, and I'd say actually let's call this the Noguchi effect. Notice one small thing about a otherwise unnoticed moment. Document it, look at it, and maybe see what it can tell you about life. Because what's going to happen is probably that you'll see how ordinary life can be transformed into narrative, meaning, and most importantly, something lasting. And in a recent video, I think we talked about a little bit about the boundaries of photography. I think it was the Sally Man video. We talked about the boundaries of photography. We talked about perhaps the ethics in that obvious discussion on the ethics and morals of photography. And so here I think it's interesting because that video was a bit more of a documentary context that would talk here in a different context, which is the street photography one. And so can it be that I can perhaps ask the question, what right do we have to kind of go out and be witness to someone else's life without their knowledge or even consent? It's a tricky question, but I think that perhaps with Noguchi's vision or what he says about it when he's challenged, can be interesting to kind of justify or perhaps find more fundament to what is his work. I think that Noguchi's work has really forced me to rethink about privacy, about respect, and perhaps I would say presence in photography. Three words that I think are totally or absolutely necessary given what we've seen and continue to see being proliferated in the online world. Candid street photography can be quite powerful, but it's never really that simple. Every photo, I believe, sits at a crossroads where our need to see beauty intersects with our need to keep the truth and our, as well, constitutional and perhaps personal boundaries. Noguchi's philosophy offers a good argument to validate his activity. He aims to connect, therefore, and not to expose. And this is fundamental wording that I've gathered when he said, quote, "The subjects tell me the meaning and value of life. To take a picture is to affirm the existence of people, and it's also an opportunity to affirm my own existence and accept it for what it is." Therefore, it's safe to assume that the photographer believes in capturing truths that exist between the individual and society. So, where do we draw the line here then? Is beauty worth the risk of crossing a personal boundary? I guess that these are more pertinent or more deeper questions that I'd like you to let me know your thoughts on down below in the comments section. Now, let's take a Noguchi composition. Noguchi's images are filled with balanced lines, layers, and actually quite unexpected elements, for instance, juxtapositions or even contrasts. He lets the scene build itself instead of trying to force a narrative. As he describes, it is important for street photographers to shoot streets as persistent storytellers without relying on the characters of the subjects, their existence in the themes selected, and the composing ability of elements such as light and shadow. In this context, of course, the old saying is also true: timing is everything. So the photographer waits, sometimes for long stretches, to catch a split second of an emotion or gesture that he feels changes the scene. Noguchi's real secret seems to be patience and, more importantly, intuition. He lets the world unfold and only shoots when it feels genuine, because he said that his subjects need to tell him the meaning and value of life. As he said previously, it's also an opportunity to affirm his own existence and accept it as is. So why am I featuring this photographer today? Because I think that the real magic and the real conversation here in Shin Noguchi's work isn't just technique, or isn't technique in my eyes, but how these images inspire us to see ordinary life and ordinary people through new eyes in a fresh perspective. Looking at the work of Shin Noguchi has actually, interestingly, provoked me to think about poetry as something that truly lives in the unnoticed. A glance, a gesture, a fleeting moment on a crowded street, during a rainy day. And so, what do you think of all this? If you work in a similar style, what's been the biggest challenge in capturing this idea of candid street photography? And if you are familiar with Noguchi's work, has he changed the way you see people? Let me know down below. And so this video is actually going to come out around Halloween time, and the decoration. And I think it's quite timely because many street photographers would have a lot of parades and people in the streets and kind of really interesting moments to capture. And so could it be that maybe this photographer can help and can give you some food for thought, or even just inspire you visually speaking? Hopefully that's the goal of today's video. And Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year, and I just wanted to kind of thinking about it and not just make a video about it, because it's also quite difficult to even find the subject. And, I don't want to make it very dark or anything, but actually pick on the opportunity that a lot of photographers will have in capturing Halloween and capturing people on the streets and capturing the fun, the diversity around, where they live, to kind of maybe introduce a different set of eyes or a fresher perspective on, storytelling and photography, street photography in this case. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting the channel. Happy Halloween, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.